We all know quite a number of people who have everything that it would take to be happy, and they are not happy because they want something else or they want more of the same. And we all know people who have lots of misfortune and they are deeply happy. They radiate happiness. Why? Because they're grateful.
Let's talk about happiness this week, or unhappiness really. A lot of Jets fans are feeling anything but happiness right now because they just went on the road, they beat the Rams, they got their first win of the year, and in doing so, they seemingly lost control of the first overall pick in the draft, and potentially Trevor Lawrence along with it. For some Jets fans, this may feel like the worst Christmas present they've ever gotten, and I totally understand those feelings, at least initially, but to me, I feel like some perspective is needed here, because historically speaking, even if they miss out on the quote-unquote generational quarterback prospect, all is not lost just yet. Now, as a disclaimer, I do want to say it's not a guarantee that the Jets won't get the first overall pick. It's very possible that the Jaguars can go out there and win a game in the next 2 weeks and give the pick right back to New York. But in my experience as somebody who's rooted for an AFC South team for a very long time, if you have to rely on the Jacksonville Jaguars to win something, you're probably going to end up disappointed. So let's just assume right off the bat that the Jags are going to pick first and the Jets are going to pick second. The prevailing opinion around the, let's just call it NFL world this week, is that the Jets made a massive mistake. They screwed up the tank, they dared to win a game, there's no way they're going to get Trevor Lawrence, and they're doomed to mediocrity for all eternity. That's a load of shit. It's not a mistake to intentionally win a football game. I know that it might seem hopeless right now after the very first win of the season, but in the spirit of giving this week, I do want to give the Jets fans that follow me some hope and something to be happy about, because to me, the state of your franchise and the implications of missing out on Trevor Lawrence are really not as bad as you might think. Yes, drafting Trevor Lawrence would be plan A for most teams. You'd be dumb if you said otherwise. But plan B here for the Jets could be just as effective if Joe Douglas can execute it correctly. Trade down and get even more picks than they already have, take one of the other first-round quality quarterbacks in this class, build a dominant and deep roster, and hire a head coach that actually knows what he's doing for once. All of those moves can still build a championship caliber program, even without the so-called slam dunk pick at quarterback. Keep in mind, as good as Lawrence is, he's in the tier of prospect that we've really only seen a few times before. Off the top of my head, the only quarterbacks that even come close to him in terms of hype were John Elway, Peyton Manning, and Andrew Luck. All of them were the chosen ones, per se, just like Lawrence is. But what's fascinating about all of them and their respective hype machines is that even though all three of those other generational quarterback prospects certainly did live up to their billing and justified their first overall selections, two of those three generational prospects arguably didn't even end up as the best quarterbacks from their own draft classes. Do you know who was drafted 26 picks after John Elway in 1983? Dan Marino, who was one of the best pure passers in the history of the sport. He never won Super Bowls like Elway did, obviously, but you'd be hard-pressed to find many Dolphins fans that would have traded Marino for anyone else during that era. And when it comes to Andrew Luck, for as phenomenal as he was, in the third round of that same draft, the Seahawks got Russell Wilson, who, when all is said and done, will probably go down as one of the 10 best quarterbacks to ever play as well. Jets fans, what you have to understand is that you don't always have to draft the first quarterback off the board to get the best results for your team. Oftentimes, the success or failure of a prospect doesn't even have as much to do with their talent as it does the situation around them. So sometimes it's better to build a good situation first and then get the quarterback later. Hell, just look at the top 10 quarterbacks in the league right now in no particular order. Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. You could even argue Justin Herbert already, Kyler Murray, Matt Ryan, maybe Matthew Stafford or Tom Brady as well for any one of those last spots. It doesn't even matter which of those names you slide into the top 10. I just gave you 14 names that are all inarguably in the top half of the league, and yet only 3 of them were the first quarterbacks taken in their draft classes. Murray, Stafford, and Ryan. And out of those 3, Murray's the only one that was taken in the last decade. All of the truly elite quarterbacks in this league, Mahomes, Watson, Wilson, Allen, Rodgers, you could maybe throw Jackson in there too since he's the reigning MVP, none of them were the first guy off the board, and all of them went to franchises that were in better shape with a stronger supporting structure around them as a result of not being the first quarterback off the board. They grew and developed into what they are now because they went to better teams with better coaching staffs and better talent. And so now that it's unlikely that the Jets are even going to get Trevor Lawrence, that's what I want them to focus on. Be a better team first so that you can grow and develop and have success with any young quarterback and not just one. When you look at the Jets roster overall, I don't even think that they're that far off from that goal either. They are not the least talented team in the league, not even close. They're just the worst coach team in the league because Adam Gase is terrible, and so their team looks worse than it is. It was only a matter of time before they ripped off a win just through sheer brute force of talent because they have a lot of really good players. I didn't expect it to happen against the Rams, obviously, because the Rams are also a really good team, but it's any given Sunday in the NFL. If you have a lot of talent, and they do, even with a really bad coaching staff, you are bound to win eventually. And so here we are. So let's just take a moment to kind of dive into the roster and look at all of the good talent that Joe Douglas has accumulated so far, because when you do look at this team overall, it's kind of well put together. For starters, at left tackle, the Jets just found their new D'Brickashaw Ferguson, except bigger and better, and that's rookie Mekhi Becton. Among tackles with at least 350 pass protection reps, Becton has the 8th fewest pressures allowed at only 18. That's about 1.5 per game. While you compare that to fellow rookie left tackle Andrew Thomas from the Giants, who has 53 pressures allowed this year, which is literally 3 times as much pressure given up. Those 18 pressures against Becton are right in line with guys like Laramie Tunsil, Trent Williams, Teron Armstead, some of the best left tackles in the game, and he's right there with them. Becton gave up 0 pressures against that Chargers duo of Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram earlier this year. He gave up nothing against Nick Bosa as well before Nick got hurt in that game. He pitched a shutout against the Colts defensive front too, which is one of the 3 or 4 best in the league collectively, and he gave up virtually nothing against Bradley Chubb and Frank Clark as well. And just this past week against that dominant Rams defensive line, he had his 3rd game of the year with 0 pressures allowed. This dude is an elite left tackle in the NFL right now, and he's only played in 12 games. That's saying a lot for how good he's going to end up being in the long run. So that's one premium position taken care of, but on the other side of the ball, the Jets also have, in my opinion, one of the 2 or 3 best interior pass rushes in the entire NFL, and perhaps one of the most underrated pass rushes overall. The Jets defense has 251 total pressures this season so far, which is 10th in the NFL. That is a top 10 pass rush in terms of disruption, even though they are 23rd in sacks because they don't have any edge rushers that can actually clean up and finish the play. But the initial pressure is there, obviously, which is still encouraging. 13 of those sacks, over half of their team total of 24, are from that interior line rotation, which includes Quinnen Williams and John Franklin Myers, while their most productive outside linebacker, by contrast, is Terrell Basham, who only has 2 sacks and 26 pressures on the year. So they really rely almost entirely on their defensive tackles right now to get after quarterbacks, which is obviously not ideal. And speaking of those DTs, by the way, both Williams and Franklin Myers rank in the top 15 in the league in pressures for interior defensive linemen. That means out of the roughly 90 to 100 defensive tackles that get significant snaps around the NFL, they are both in that elite tier of pass rusher, and they line up right next to each other, so it's very hard to double team both of them consistently. Again, if you contrast that with Basham out on the edge, who you would figure would benefit from never drawing any of those double teams himself, he is ranked just 56th in pressures among all edge defenders. Straight up, they just need one more guy that can come off the edge and finish what the interior pass rush gets started, and this can be a nasty front four. So the foundation is there. The disruption is there, and even on early downs where pass rushing isn't at a premium, Folo Fatukasi, who was out against the Rams last week, he's one of the best run-stopping nose tackles in the league too. That entire interior defensive line is a slaughterhouse for opposing offenses, so there's something to build around there, which is more than most one-win teams can say. Elsewhere on the roster, Marcus May is also one of the best safeties in the league when he's healthy. He's exceptional down in the box, he's great in man coverage, he's a fantastic leader. He was actually the guy to get the game-sealing pass deflection on that go ball on 4th down against the Rams last week, ironically enough. May will be a free agent this year, but I can promise you he won't cost nearly as much money as Jamal Adams will, despite also being an elite safety himself this season. So if the Jets do lock him up at a value, which I think Joe Douglas will do, that is a huge win for them. At nickel corner, Brian Poole and most recently Javelin Guidry have been absolutely killing it in the slot. In New York's last 3 games in particular, when Guidry has finally been given significant playing time due to Poole's injury, he has averaged only allowing 3 catches for 29 yards per game, and he's still not given up a single touchdown, so that's super impressive in its own right. And then on the outside, Bryce Hall, another favorite rookie of mine out of Virginia, he started to get some playing time as well recently, and he's coming off a great game against the Rams last week, including a phenomenal interception where he sat in a hang zone against bootleg to the wide side of the field. He read Goff's eyes from start to finish, picked it off, returned it down inside scoring position for the Jets offense, and even though the Jets offense didn't get a touchdown out of it, they only got a field goal, those 3 points ended up being the difference in the game. Oh, and by the way, other than all these young players that I really like, just a reminder that this unit also has CJ Mosley coming back next season too after he opted out for 2020. So this defense, other than edge rusher of course, has a ton of upside and not that many holes to fill. On offense, as I mentioned before, you've got a potentially elite left tackle in Mekhi Becton, an exciting young receiver in Denzel Mims, who's already made a few spectacular catches. Next year's starting right side of the offensive line, Greg Van Roten and George Fant, they are at minimum average together. Van Roten in particular, in my opinion, is an above average right guard, but he's been out the last few games. You've still got Jamison Crowder, who I think is a really nice slot receiver. Rashad Perriman has some good deep speed. So again, the cupboard is not totally bare on offense either. There is talent on this squad, but the Jets need as many picks as they can get to make the last few steps of this rebuild happen. Taking quarterback completely out of the equation for a second, they need a new center, desperately. They need a new left guard, even more desperately. They need another running back, preferably one that's not already collecting on Social Security. They could use another receiver, and I mean in the KJ Hamler mold of receiver, a true high 4.2 to low 4.3 kind of guy, somebody that can really take advantage of the one-on-ones that having Denzel Mims on the other side is going to give him. They could also use another tight end, another edge rusher, as I mentioned before, and probably another boundary corner too, because they're kind of thin outside. So that's 3 or 4 major needs and another 3 or 4, again, notwithstanding quarterback, that are really just more depth guys that you need to fill out your roster. That's not that bad of a shopping list, but it's also really hard to get all of that without either a lot of picks or a lot of money. But let's just say that Joe Douglas is able to check off most of that shopping list in one off season, either using draft picks or using free agency. Let's just pretend he's able to do that. If he also goes out and hires a great coach like, say, Brian Daboll out of Buffalo, somebody who has a history of working with young quarterbacks and ironing out their flaws, somebody who pays attention to modern offensive concepts and how to integrate them into his system, somebody who knows how to game plan properly and make in-game adjustments in his play calling. If you go get that kind of coach and pair it with the almost ready roster of the New York Jets, honestly, this situation's looking pretty good to me. And like I said earlier, the goal here should be to build a good situation first so that you can have success with any quarterback, not just one of them. If you build a good roster and a good locker room with a good coaching staff, who's to say that Zach Wilson from BYU or Justin Fields can't be just as successful with the Jets as Trevor Lawrence would have been? Hell, who's to say that Sam Darnold still can't be salvaged? He was once upon a time a pretty damn good quarterback prospect himself. Football is a team sport. One player cannot make you win or lose. And I say this as a Texans fan, so trust me, if one player could make you win or lose, Deshaun Watson would almost always win. But he doesn't, because that's not how football works. Jets fans, I know you're hurting. Trust me, I really, really do. But losing out on Trevor Lawrence is not the end of the world. Would he be a great Jet? Yeah, probably. But so could Sam Darnold, or Justin Fields, or Zach Wilson, or Trey Lance, or Mac Jones. You can run down the whole list. The NFL draft is a complete crapshoot. Everybody knows that. You can't predict anything once these guys get in the league. Trust me, I try to do it for a living and I fucking suck at it. For every Eddie Jackson or Aaron Donald or Jesse Bates or Brian O'Neill that I get right, I get Justin Herbert wrong, Pat Mahomes wrong, Christian Hackenberg wrong, and a slew of others. Nobody knows anything. It's completely unpredictable. The only thing that we can predict is this. No quarterback prospect, not even the generational ones, can survive a bad coach, a bad roster, and a bad culture. It's just not possible, and you can look at Andrew Luck for proof of that. If you build that entire supporting structure around a young, talented quarterback first, more often than not, his development will take care of itself. So if you're a fan of the Jets and you're finding yourself feeling unhappy this week because of a win, just try to be grateful. Be grateful that Adam Gase only has a couple weeks left. Be grateful for Mekhi Becton. Be grateful for Quinnen Williams and John Franklin Myers and Marcus May and Denzel Mims. Be grateful that the New England Patriots imploded this year. Be grateful for a fresh start. Because if you can be grateful for all of that instead of dwelling on the losses and what the draft order could have been and who you could have drafted, if you just be grateful, you can be happy. And in this completely fucked up, wild year of 2020, if just a little bit of gratitude can lead to a little bit of happiness and hope, then that's really all we can ask for. So I'll close it off with this. Enjoy the holidays with your families. Stay safe, stay happy, enjoy each other's company, and find things to be grateful for. I'll be back on this channel in a few days with a true and proper film breakdown episode on that crazy Ravens run game. So until then, cheers. Thank you for watching this week's episode, and also thank you to this week's sponsor, NordVPN. If you're like me and you cut the cord many years ago, the most difficult part about that decision has always been finding a way to stream live NFL games. But with NordVPN, it's now easier than ever to do so legally. All you have to do is download NordVPN, select a server somewhere in Europe, I tend to do Germany myself, and then once you connect to that European server, that will allow you to also purchase a subscription to NFL's Game Pass streaming service, which is the service that I use to make these episodes every single week. In the American version of Game Pass, which I also own separately, you do not get access to live streaming of NFL games. But in the European one, because of the difference in licensing agreements, you do actually get access to every single regular and postseason game and the Super Bowl, and it's $100 cheaper than NFL Sunday Ticket would be on top of an existing DirecTV subscription. Plus, it also comes with all of the normal NFL Game Pass features as well, like NFL Network Live 24/7, the All-22 Coaches tape that you see in all of these episodes, full game replays and highlights for games going back the entire last decade, and tons of NFL films and NFL Network programming like America's Game and A Football Life. NFL Game Pass streaming on NordVPN is by far the best way to stream live NFL content, plus the league still gets paid too through that Game Pass subscription, so it's not even pirating. It's all completely legal and everybody wins, especially you, the football fan. If you're interested in upgrading your game watching setup both for the rest of this season and for next year and beyond, and you want to try this out, you can get 68% off of a 2-year plan, plus an additional 4 extra months free on top of that with NordVPN's Christmas special. That makes it cost less than $4 a month, and you can get that deal at nordvpn.com/BrettKollmann3 at the link in the description below, and by using my promo code BrettKollmann3 at checkout. Again, thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this week's show, and for giving all of us a better option to stream live games this season. As for me and channel news, I've got yet another episode coming out later this week, and that one's going to be on the Ravens run game, which is fantastic and complex, and there's a lot to go over in that episode, so I can't wait to dive into it with you guys. I'll be back in a few days with that, and until then, I hope you enjoy your Christmas with your families, and I'll see you later.